83% of people say in a survey that litter is getting worse. 90% complained about the face masks dropped in the street. This is part of the research conducted by Clean Up Britain, which, as the title suggests, campaigns for behavioural change around littering habits, and also says the vast majority of the UK's local authorities aren't using their enforcement powers enough. The campaign's headed up by John Reid, who joins us. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Pat.
Nice to talk to you again. I mean, we've spoken on the programme before about this, and you have, stringent rules that you'd like to see be brought in, or at least utilised where the powers aren't utilised at the moment. Tell us about your plan.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thing to say is, as I'm sure your listeners have realised, we've got an epidemic of litter in this country. It's a severe problem, and we need to start looking at some really very serious and in some cases quite radical solutions to confront that problem. The first thing we want to see is that we want to see fines introduced which are far more of a deterrent than the ones at the current level. Currently, local authorities can fine people only up to £150. We want to see that fine increased to £1,000 to make it a real deterrent for anyone caught littering. And secondly, we want the government to make it mandatory for every single local authority, every local council in England, to have to enforce the law. At the moment, huge numbers, 3 out of 4 councils don't enforce the law. So in effect, we're living in a country where it is lawless in relation to litter. We live in a lawless country, which is a searing indictment on the government, but it's true.
You're talking about increasing litter fines from £150, where they now stand, up to £1,000. Would you see that as a first offence, if you like, John? A spot fine of £1,000 if you get caught, or is that a repeat offender?
Absolutely. No, you get it straight away. We need to start being serious in this country. We're far too weak, and it's sad to say, particularly with the Conservative government, who are meant to be tough on crime, but they're not. They're very weak in relation to littering, which is why, unfortunately, across the south of England and all over England, you'll see Britain looks like a rubbish tip, Pat. It absolutely does. And I ask people, if they at all doubt what I'm saying, when you next go out in the car, look at the verges, look at the roundabouts, look at the slip roads, look at the side of motorways and A roads. It's absolutely filthy. So we need to do something really radical and serious about that, which is what Clean Up Britain's all about and why we've launched this national petition. So I'd urge any of your readers who are disgusted by the state of the country they live in at the moment, which is a rubbish tip, to go please to don'ttrashourfuture.co.uk. Don'ttrashourfuture.co.uk and sign the petition. We've already got 55,000 people who've signed it, asking for the government to get serious about confronting litter. And we need to do that in this country. We haven't done so far, and the failed results are lying literally on the street for everybody to see.
One of the points you'd like to see make a change, or something that's brought in to make a change, is civic pride lessons on the national curriculum, which you might think actually could sit quite nicely in schools. I know the message of reduce, reuse, recycle, which is a good message to have as well, it's taught quite a lot in lessons in school, personal social issues and that kind of thing. We had a caller earlier on, this is what sparked the debate actually, from Ron in St Denny's, who did a big litter pick with the Green Party, was absolutely dismayed to see how fast the litter returned again. It's in our local paper today, which is what sparked all this. But he says austerity has caused some of the problem. People who feel let down by society therefore don't see any need to, do their bit and put stuff in the bin or keep the area that they live in clean. Do you subscribe to that argument at all?
Well, there may be a little element of that. The thing is, what we've got to stop doing in this country, actually, Pat, is start making excuses for ourselves. We constantly make excuses for our bad behaviour. And yes, there are probably 15% of the people in this country who are socially excluded and really, are in a sense detached from mainstream society. I think that's true. And those people might come in to that category. But the vast majority of people are not. They are just lazy, irresponsible and antisocial, and that's the way they behave. And I'm afraid, look, let's call a spade a spade. If people want to see something done about this, please do support Clean Up Britain. Please do sign that petition, which will take to number 10 Downing Street. We need to put pressure on the government to start acting seriously and taking this issue seriously, because at the moment it's a litterers charter. Anybody can go out. I can walk up my local high street and I can shop McDonald's, Coke or whatever I want anywhere, and nothing will happen to me. Nothing will happen to me. And in that respect, it just reinforces the point I was making earlier to you, Pat. We live in a lawless society. In relation to litter, Britain is lawless.
So you think there should be a mandatory requirement for all councils to enforce these litter fines, as you've said, that powers that they actually do have already but don't take advantage of? It's a common complaint any time we do a phone-in like this at all, John, about parking costs, for example. Oh, well, that's just a way of generating cash. Speed cameras, that's just a way of generating cash. Where we know local councils are actually on their uppers in some parts of the country. I know Southampton reported a £10 million deficit because of COVID at their end of the year last year. This is quite a good way of addressing that, perhaps you'd think.
Well, actually, the reality is it's not, because I tell you one of the reasons, Pat, why councils are so very, very poor at enforcing the law is because they don't make money out of it. It's funny enough, it's very difficult. And as you might imagine, somebody like me, unfortunately, is highly sensitized about this issue.
Yeah.
And I very rarely see people actually in the act of doing it. So one of the reasons councils do not enforce the law in relation to littering is because they don't make money out of it. Whereas in comparison, to my knowledge, no car has ever spoken back to a litter sort of car park enforcement officer.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're at, literally, when it's a difficult job, honestly, finding people, and that's why they don't do it. They just don't make money out of it. But in the byproduct of that is that, unfortunately, the law is not enforced. There's no deterrent. Everybody basically knows that you have virtually no chance of getting caught. And even if the fine does go to 1,000, and we think it should do, like it does in other countries. Just let me give you an example of how weak we really are in this country. In California, it's $1,000 straight away on the spot. New South Wales, around Sydney, it's 2,200 Aussie dollars. If you go to Massachusetts on the east coast of the States, it's $10,000. And ours is a maximum of 150, and most councils, and you must get this, most councils only give out fines of £80, and then they let people off 50% of the fee if they pay in 14 days, 40 quid. We are just too soft in this country. I'm afraid that's the case. And let's not make excuses for ourselves. Let's get on and do something and really address this issue, because we're all living in a rubbish tip at the moment.
John Reid of cleanupbritain.org. You can find out much more about his campaign on that website. John, thank you very much indeed for coming on. The civic pride issue is an interesting one. Denise in Bishopstoke on the text 81333 with Solent as the first word says, Pat, it begins with education. Children need to be taught formally in school to bin their rubbish. Take Japan as an example, or you could add it to that list of Massachusetts and California, as John Reid just mentioned there.